Besides being uncooperative, it's uncooperative. Thank you. Besides being uncooperative, it's everybody. I will call to order the meeting of the Beaumont City Council, regular council meeting for Tuesday, September 27, 2022, here at 6:03 p.m. in council chambers. As with every meeting, we start our meeting off with a land acknowledgement. And given how it's a very special day today, I'll ask you, would you all please rise for this proclamation, if you could, please? We're pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. This week, we will commemorate both the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and Orange Shirt Day. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a direct response to Call to Action 80, which called for a federal statutory day of commemoration and is observed in conjunction with Orange Shirt Day. This day honors the children who never returned home, the survivors of residential schools, and their families and communities. Public commemoration of this tragic and painful history and ongoing impact of residential schools is a vital component of the reconciliation process. The orange shirt we wear today are a symbol of stripping away of culture, freedom, and self-esteem experienced by Indigenous children over generations. As we gather here in the traditional Treaty 6 territory, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people. We have ongoing responsibility to protect and honor all of life. With that, we'll take 1 minute moment of silence, please. Thank you. Please be seated. Continuing on with our agenda, we have proclamations, and there are 4 this evening. So bear with me, please. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, September 30th, 2022. Whereas, in the words of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Canada's residential school system for Indigenous children was an education system in name only, and was created with the purpose of separating Indigenous children from their communities to weaken family ties and links to their culture. And whereas these institutions existed in Canada for more than 100 years and well into the 1990s, inflicting trauma on thousands of Indigenous families across multiple generations. And whereas the Truth and Reconciliation's final report details 94 calls to action intended to reconcile our country's past by acknowledging the harmful legacy of residential schools, honoring the culture and history of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit survivors, and building a new vision based on mutual respect. And whereas the Canadian government enacted action number 80 by declaring September 30th of each year as a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And whereas Beaumont aims to celebrate the contribution and aspiration of people from all backgrounds and walks of life and develop a greater understanding and appreciation for the community's rich, unique, and diverse culture. And whereas Beaumont also seeks to foster an inclusive, safe, and welcoming community for Indigenous peoples. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim September 30th, 2022 as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in the City of Beaumont, dated 27th of September, 2022. Orange Shirt Day, September 30th, 2022. Whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Summary Report, Call to Action 80, calls for a National Day to honor residential school survivors, their families, and communities, and to ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. And whereas Orange Shirt Day is being celebrated across Canada and beyond as a day to commemorate the survivors of residential schools, to remember those who did not survive, and to reaffirm our commitment to ensuring a better future for all children. And whereas the Council of the City of Beaumont supports the importance of creating awareness and encouraging communities to support a safe and inclusive environment for generations of children to come. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim September 30th, 2022 as Orange Shirt Day, City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 27th of September, 2022. World Cerebral Palsy Day, October 6th, 2022. Whereas cerebral palsy is a neuromotor disability that affects approximately 3.3 people in every 1,000. And whereas cerebral palsy is a term used to describe a group of conditions affecting body movement, muscle coordination, and not a disease. And whereas in Alberta, it is estimated that over 9,000 individuals are affected by cerebral palsy. And whereas there is more than one diagnosis of cerebral palsy for every 500 children born each year in Alberta. And the number of new cases per year has increased by 25% over the past decade. And whereas cerebral palsy affects all levels of society, all levels of socioeconomic status. And whereas cerebral palsy affects an estimated 17 million people worldwide. And whereas the Cerebral Palsy Association of Alberta is a leader in advocating for persons with disabilities as a primary center for providing programs, services, and information on treatments, resources, and services relating to cerebral palsy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim October 6th, 2022 as World Cerebral Palsy Day, City of Beaumont, Alberta, 27th September, 2022. One more. Give me a second. And we have some guests in the audience for this proclamation, so welcome. Disability Employment Awareness for October. Whereas more than 6 million Canadians aged 15 and over, 22% of the population identify as having a disability, it is expected actual numbers are likely higher. And whereas approximately 60% of working age adults with disabilities are currently employed or out of the labor market as a result. And whereas the Pan Disability Connection is a collective impact initiative led by 10 organizations in Beaumont, Strathcona County, and Edmonton, working together to identify and eliminate systematic barriers to employment for persons with disabilities. And whereas the City of Beaumont is committed to developing programs and partnerships to attract, engage, and retain persons with disabilities in its workforce. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as Disability Employment Awareness Month, the City of Beaumont, Alberta, 27th of September, 2022. And on that note, I will be spending some time with Andre. Is he here today? Hi, Andre. I'll be working with Andre at Extra Foods for an hour and a half next Monday, October 3rd. I'll be helping him out doing his job, and he'll tell me how to do my job, I'm sure. So I'll look forward to that. So thank you all for coming. Welcome, and happy to proclaim Disability Employment Awareness Month in October. So thank you all for coming. You're welcome to stay as long as you want to. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next part of our agenda is the adopting of the agenda. Thank you all for coming. Administration, Ms. Winter, any changes to the agenda for this evening? Oh, hang on. I know you can. I forget about that. So you put your mic on, okay?
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any changes to the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Member of Council willing to move the adoption of the agenda as presented. Councilor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
That the September 27th, 2022 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will ask council to vote. That passed unanimously. I should mention that Councilor Monkoff Swain was unable to attend this evening due to work commitments in his full-time position. We wish him well in his presentation tomorrow, but he sends his regards. He couldn't be here this evening. So with that, I'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is the consent agenda. And if you put on the screen, if you could, please. The consent agenda is that items 5A, regular council meeting, September 13, 2022. 6D, dressing room, trailers, and washroom outdoor rinks. 6E, regulating short-term residential rentals. 6F, response to development concerns raised at the May 24th, 2022 council meeting. 10A, Beaumont Arts Council membership. 10B, regional initiatives update. 10C, high school site assembly update. These are proposed to be on the consent agenda. Is there a member of council wishing to make the motion, or is a member of council wishing to take items off the consent agenda? Councilor Miller, you have the floor. Ashley?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to remove 6D, dressing room, trailers, and washrooms, as well as 10C, high school site assembly update.
Thank you, Councilor. Ms. Winter? When I'm seeing a member of council go on to speak, it's not showing on my screen like it usually does. Am I doing something wrong? You make a moment, council, sorry.
We're getting the red right away.
It's
when
still
we
on the
press.
voting. We have to get off the voting.
Well, I thought I would do the voting. Hang on a second. Maybe I didn't. Okay.
Here's when he clicked, it turned
Yeah,
on.
you see, I thought usually it comes up saying Okay. Okay. Usually it comes up on the screen there. Eh?
Councilman Cook, can you just get your document for 1 second? Comes up.
Okay. Can you shut yours off? I'll shut it. Okay, I think Councillor Barnhart was next. Would you mind putting your button again? Councillor Tessier? Yep, good. Okay, we're back to normal. Thanks, Ms. Winter. Appreciate that. Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to remove item 10A from the consent agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier, Renee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove 6F, please.
6. Thank you. Any further requests to amend the consent agenda? Ms. Winter, we require just a motion to adopt consent agenda as changed, correct?
Thank you, Mayor. No, just the motion as it stands, just removing those items. We just do it exactly the way it is. We don't
Okay,
need to
as it
change
is.
anything.
Okay, thank you. Any further changes to the consent agenda? Seeing none, is a member of council willing to move the following agenda items without debate? Councillor Barnhart, Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Can't read it, it's too small. The council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, thank you. Regular council meeting minutes, September 13th. And item 6E, regulating short-term residential rentals. And 10B, regional initiatives update.
Thank you very much. That's the consent. Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, would you please vote? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We'll continue with our agenda. Open forum. Ms. Winter, do you have any open forum this evening? Guests?
Thank you, Mayor. My power went away. We do not have any open forum registrations this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winter. Next on our agenda is into 6A, building our tomorrow today, council strategic plan for 2022, 2026. Normally I begin with administration to present and then have council ask questions and so on, but I'm going to take a break from my tradition and opening some comments myself before I pass on to administration to present our council strategic plan for 2022, 2026. Actually, I wrote some comments, so bear with me for a moment. Beaumont is a community of choice, growing at a faster rate than any other municipality in the Edmonton metropolitan region. We are second to none in providing a quality of life that is safe, welcoming, and family-friendly. The work of previous councils and our Beaumont Municipal Strategic Plan 2017 to 2021 set the direction that makes these possible. Your council's new strategic plan for 2022-2026, building our tomorrow today, continues on that foundation and articulates the aspirational direction for the next 4 years and into the future. This plan reflects our commitment to the health, well-being, and connectedness. It's a funny word, but it's the right word. Economic prosperity for our community. Beaumont is in a great position today because a generation of people before us had a vision for the community and put in the effort and work to make it happen. This strategic plan includes aspirations and actions to ensure Beaumont's fantastic quality of life is here for the generations after us. Our quality of life is the envy of many people in our area, with a safe, close-knit community, feeling that surrounding areas can't compete with, and yet with all the activity, community events of a much larger city. I'm very pleased with how our strategic plan has come to fruition, and I want to thank the members of council and administration who took time away from their families on several occasions to take the time to develop this document. And with that, I'll pass on to our CEO Schwartz for his comments and presenting of our strategic plan for 2022 to 2026.
Thank
Mike?
you very much, Mayor Daniluk. That pretty much sets the context. I think this is a very unique plan. It's been built the journey started back in March, as you mentioned, on a weekend, and has had several iterations since then. This represents the last stage of its approval, if you will, and then it goes public and becomes operationalized. So as you stated, building our tomorrow today, I've seen a number of strategic plans in my day, and this one is one of the best that I've seen. It's really custom fit for Beaumont. We have significant advantages and we have some challenges that we need to overcome now and into the future. And I think the aspirations, which I'm going to quickly go over because I just think they're very important and need to be stated. for those who don't get a copy of the strategic plan that may be listening. So as you mentioned, it's built on 5 aspirations. So what happens after that is administration then operationalizes those aspirations with tactics and operational items, which council will have their hand in as well. We will review the strategic plan on an annual basis to see how we're progressing and to make sure it's still aimed in the right direction. So there's opportunities to tweak it as well. But the 5 aspirations that you're referring to, number 1 was an economically prosperous and financially sustainable community to last generations. So what we hear is we need to diversify revenue. All of this growth that people are seeing, every single subdivision in our community is building houses right now, is all residential growth. It's not sustainable. Yeah, you need to maintain all the infrastructure. So we need non-residential revenue to help pay for all the great services we have. Second aspiration, healthcare services that meet the needs of our growing population. We actually met with a health provider with Health Cities today, and we talked about the strategic plan. And the notion was that we need to come up with some operations that intentionally improve healthcare in our community. And we have a number of options available to us, and we'll work through those as an administration and as a council. Third one is future-proof growth for a safe, inclusive, and vibrant community. You hear a lot in today's lens about environmental, social, and governance. We need to apply those lenses to the decisions we make and to the development that we do in our community. And that's what that aspiration, what we heard as it being described. Number 4, strong volunteer spirit and warm neighborly feeling. We hear that a lot in our community. We have a lot of volunteer groups. We want to keep the small town feel as we grow, and that's very important. I know council talks about that all along. We're the safest community in Alberta 2 years running. We want to continue to foster that close-knit Beaumont special feel as we grow, and that may not be as simple a task as we'd like, but that's that aspiration aspires to that. And the last one is empowered citizens who connect and collaborate with civic government. We need to allow more access and more information available to our members, our residents, and our businesses in the community. So we started doing work on that already, as council has seen on the digital master plan and a number of other ways. We've certainly beefed up our public engagement. So those are the 5 aspirations, and what we will do now. So the next steps is, if approved tonight or accepted for information that we consider approved, it will start to be distributed on our social media sites, and we have a plan to get it out to as many people as possible. And then we will start operationalizing it with business plans, of which will come back at budget time, every year on budget. And I talked about the annual review process, so we can have a look at the measurements and make sure we're, make the accomplishments and make sure we're still going in the right direction. I talked today about our meeting with Health Cities, and it was very enlightening when we looked at that one aspiration, healthcare services that meet the needs of our growing population. The work we've done with Health Cities up till now has been looking for this wonderful, crazy solution. And after our discussion today, we realized we need to be more simple. So we look at that aspiration, and it leaves it open to determining what our community needs, community health being the secret to success, as we've seen in other countries. So really excited to be able to take that aspiration and right off the bat, start doing some work on it. So with that, I'll pass it back to council if they have any questions or comments. I think you did a great job on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Appreciate that. With that, I'll open up to council. Any comments you may have this evening, and proceed this evening. We have 2 recommendations in the document. One, to accept the report as information. The second part of the recommendation is to actually accept and implement the strategic plan to be approved. So we have 2 motions ahead of us once we have our comments. So Kathy, you have the floor first, followed by Councilor Van Newkirk.
Thank you very much, Mayor and CAO Schwartz. I think you've said a lot of what needed to be said to kind of preface this, the acceptance of this report. I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the city. I think it starts off with saying we're the envy, and even though sometimes you think, well, that's not necessarily a good virtue to be envious, but at the same time, I think we work hard at staying in that position. And I feel that we didn't pick low-hanging fruit. I think that the 5 aspirations are truly aspirational. And I know our citizens are going to keep us, our feet to the fire, because many of the things that we put in there are what we're hearing from citizens. We heard at the doorstep, and we're hearing every day. So I truly think that it's a great plan. I like that it's short. but it's being short does not mean that it isn't packed with real hard stuff to do. And I think there's a myriad of things that have to come after this, but it's a good beginning. And keeping the end in mind is what's hard to do, but I think we have it now in front of us, and we need to keep it off the shelf and using it. And I'm glad that it's going to be distributed widely. So thank you for your hard work on this administration, and thank you, council, because I think it's a good document.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councilman Cook. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to start by thanking the administration for all the hard work on this. It's a huge task to corral a whole bunch of individual thought and ideas onto a piece of paper, craft it into bullet points, things that make sense, and make it look pretty in a document at the end. So thank you very much to administration for that. I'd also like to point out that we've used the word aspirations and not goals here, so that, you know, that's very deliberate as well. So 5 aspirations. So I think this document for me very much sums up the "we get it and we hear you" from council to the community. The first aspiration speaks to being economically prosperous and knowing that we have to pay for things. The second one is something that the group heard very loud on the campaign, is let's improve healthcare in Beaumont. The next part is we need to include everyone. You know, we embrace our volunteers in Beaumont, and most importantly to me, and I really push for this one, is, you know, an aspiration of empowered citizens who connect and collaborate with civic government. So it's very easy to be a critic, and it is very easy to lob things out there. What is very hard are solutions, and what is very hard and takes time is thoughtful messages, collaboration, and support for the activities that we're doing, support for the initiatives that we're looking for opinions on, and, you know, support in the day-to-day ideas to get some energy going. And I think that empowered citizens who connect and collaborate with civic government is a great aspiration for that. So thank you to all, and looking forward to approving a couple motions tonight, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just keep this short and sweet as well. As a new counselor going into strategic plan, it was a lot of work and a little overwhelming at first, but I think there was a lot of work done by administration on the back end. And as a new counselor as well, I have to say that really appreciative. You have all this stuff and it looks really big, and then you're kind of thinking, how is it all going to come together? And so I think by looking at it, it really exemplifies kind of what CAO Short said. All of our ideas and everything really came together really nicely, which was really great to see. And it focuses on our challenges, but also our aspirations, which kind of go hand in hand and will come together. I think the healthcare piece is a really important one as well. That's something we hear time and time again in our community. And so it'll be important for us to work on and advocate for. As CAO Short said as well, community health is very important. And I think this plan really emphasizes our aspiration to work closely with our community, which I think is something that each and every one of these counselors really worked on coming into this term. And so I look forward to working on this throughout the next few years. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Kat. Any further comments from any of the councillors before I move forward? One last quick comment. I will say, people who have done a strategic plan may not understand how much work it actually takes to do a very good strategic plan. And I want to compliment our 3 rookie councillors who came in and jumped into the fire with both feet and got involved in the process, and had a very productive several days of meetings and so on. Administration put a lot of time on this as well too. So thank you to council. I think this is a great document, and I won't spend any more time on kudos, because we've all said some pretty good stuff, and it's good work. Now the work does begin now. So with that, we have 2 motions in front of us this evening on the strategic plan. I think you've got on the screen, please. Ms. Winter, at your convenience. Thank you very much. I will ask do you want one motion, Ms. Winter, or could we do 2 together as one actual motion, both parts? Which do you prefer? Which is better procedurally?
Thank you, Mayor. One motion just for both of them. We have the word "and" in there, so it will
Okay.
cover off for both. Thank you.
Works for me. Member of council willing to move the motion before you? Councilman Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the September 27th, 2022 report, Building Our Tomorrow Today, Council Strategic Plan 2022 through 2026 be received as information, and that the Building Our Tomorrow Today, Council Strategic Plan 2022 to 2026, as identified in attachment 1 of the September 27th, 2022 report, be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Discussion on the motion, Council. See no discussion. I will ask you to vote, please, on the motion. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Good work, Council Administration, on this particular document. Looking forward. Implementation. Next on our agenda is 6B, Adaptive Programming in Beaumont. Let me get your mic ready to go there.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm Amanda Cuthbert, Manager of Recreation. This evening, I have an informational report for you on the city's adaptive programming services. The current adaptive programming we offer is in aquatics through the Canadian Red Cross called Adapted Aquatics. It offers modified swimming techniques that accommodate the abilities of individuals with cognitive or physical limitations. Registration is managed through our aquatic staff, not the typical click-it registration process. This allows our team to understand the client's needs, the schedule, and schedule the lessons. We have accommodated most of the requests in 2021 and 2022. Like other aquatic programs, available classes don't always align with the client's schedule. Currently, we do not have a waitlist for this program. Program usage over the last year, fall of 2021, we had 8 of 15 spots filled. Winter of 2022, we had 5 of 11 spots filled. Spring of 2022, we had 5 of 7 spots filled. Summer of 2022, we had 6 of 8 spots filled. Future programming changes. We will transition from the Canadian Red Cross to Life Saving Society Learn to Swim programs next month. This program change will offer a structured 45-minute, 8-class lesson, along with the current 30-minute private class. The change in program will provide expanded opportunities to register for adaptive swim instruction. While administration has taken steps to try to ensure that the city's recreation programs are welcoming and inclusive, we know there are opportunities for continuous improvement, such as increased education and development of staff and programmers. Beaumont Community and Social Development Department has awarded a project to develop an equity, diversity, and inclusion framework. Administration is anticipating this work will result in recommendations such as accessibility audit on programmings and facilities. This may provide some valuable data for reconsidering adaptive programming. Considering this is pending work, administration is not prepared to make a recommendation on at this point in time. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Welcome to council. Nice to see you again. Thank you for your report. Council, any questions for Ms. Cuthbert on the report as presented? Councilor Cook, Kat, you have the floor.
Probably no question was going from me. Thank you for the report. I definitely appreciate that you stated that there is room for continuous improvement. While I see that currently our program is not filled, I would be interested to know some of our numbers pre-COVID. I'm guessing just with people with disabilities often are immunocompromised, and that might, just with COVID and everything, might be impacting our numbers a little bit, I'm guessing. So I would just be curious to that, but I understand. Thank you for providing the information. So while I'm happy to hear that we are working on an EDI framework that will influence future decisions, I have to say I'm a little disappointed that we don't have any options in front of us today, just because I know these things take time and have to go through budgets. And so I'm a little bit worried that we're quite far away with this. So do we have any timeline as to when the EDI framework is expected to be completed?
From what I understand, that it is looking to be completed in March in the new year. We have tried to put aside for the 2023 budget. We've allocated some funding for some consulting fees for projects that could be used for something like this. There is quite a few unknowns, so it's hard for us to really put a firm number or plan in place at this point in time.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm definitely looking forward to the completion and to having some adaptive programming available, because I really do think that it's needed in our community, especially as we continue to grow. We will have more and more people, and I think often especially when we think about EDI initiatives and stuff, people with disabilities are often overlooked. So I look forward to that coming back at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, we have Councillor Miller, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Cuthbert, for coming in. Yeah, I was looking forward to hearing maybe beyond aquatics, just some more options for adaptive programming and kind of what that looks like. Personally, I would just like to learn more about it and how we can implement it into our community. So just to feed off of what Councillor McCook was saying, I was looking forward to learning more about it, but hopefully that will be coming back to us in the near future. And I do think it's very beneficial to our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Just wondering with regard to the ability to have more people join up, have we received any feedback direct around, what might have led to some of the lower enrollment? You spoke to it a bit, but did we, is there price issues? Is there timeline concerned? Is there, a programming style, or are there aspects of the things that we do in the water that might not be comfortable for some people? Have we got any of that feedback provided to us at all?
No, I haven't heard too much feedback like that. A lot of the feedback we get in all swimming lessons, including the adapted, is really having enough programming at all the times that the pool is open. So we don't really have instructors that and the ability to have swimming lessons, from 8 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. I think we don't have enough at those prime times. We just don't have enough room in the pool. So I think that's about the only challenge that has been communicated to us.
Yeah, one of the things I've wondered, and this would be a difficult thing to figure out, but how do we know that we're reaching the people who might need help, right? Like that, and I know that's an age-old question in some of the issues that we've talked about here around, reaching out to those who might need and making sure they know and making sure they're aware and those types of things. So anyways, more of a comment than anything, but thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this in, Ms. Cuthbert, because it's an area we're obviously very interested in and want to see more growth in that whole service delivery. I think my question is along the lines of Councillor Van Newkirk. So specifically, when it comes to advertising this program or promoting it, it's not your typical way of, just put an ad in the paper for this type of a program. So do we have contacts in different outreach service providers, health authorities? Do we do that? Or is that something that we need to provide more assistance to you to do?
I would say that we are not going that far as the advertising in that. So that is something that we can absolutely look at.
I have heard that in a number of instances, not just about the adaptive programming, but just in terms of getting it out in different ways, more strategically. And I think that's what I heard Councillor Van Newkirk also saying, that the outreach to the organizations that are serving the population that we want this to address. So I would suggest maybe that's in the future when we come back with the framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the September 27, 2022 adaptive programming and Beaumont report be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion. And that's accepted unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is 6C, snow removal improvements report. Now, this should be a very short report, right? Because snow removal is never an issue in Beaumont. Okay, all right. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Bryce Piacentini. I'm the manager of Parks and Roads Operations at the City of Beaumont.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I've provided a report on snow removal, and I have the report in the form of a presentation as well, which...
1 second, sir. You pull your mic just a little closer, and it's very directional. Speak right into it so the people at home can hear.
Sorry about that.
That's totally fine. Thank you.
I've provided a report on snow removal and a review of the 2021 and 2022 season. I have that report in the form of a presentation that I like to perform. Thank you.
There we go.
So this is the snow removal improvements report presented on September 27, 2022. My presentation will follow the issues identified in the 2021 and 2022 winter season, jurisdictional reviews, best practices and recommended improvements, financial implications, and questions following the completion. Through the winter season of 21 and 22 resulted in significant challenges for many municipalities around the capital region. Some conditions that we found challenging were snowfall quantities at 25% above average in the months of December 2021, and in the early months of 2022 above average snowfall accumulations for the months of January, February, March, and April. We had multiple freezing rain events, unusual snowfall events at prolonged sub 30 degrees Celsius temperatures, and drastic temperature swings from week to week, impacting snowpack integrity. As a result of the following issues that were identified, the following issues were identified throughout the season. We had a buildup of snowpack and failure of snowpack in the P3 and P4 areas during the warmer weather events. Consistent snow events resulting in clearing efforts not reaching P3 and P4 areas between snowfall events. Deterioration of trail conditions due to rain, temperature variations, and significant and frequent snowfall events. Additionally, we found a hindrance in vehicles and obstructions adjacent to the roadways along curbs that hindered clearing efforts and slowed up crew production. A review of similar sized municipalities indicated that snowpack levels are used as a trigger to activate service level commitments. Completion of initial sanding and clearing based on snowfall accumulation with snowpack as a mechanism to enhance rapid clearing response. As a result, we found that Beaumont service levels align with municipalities in the region. Our recommendation today is that administration continue to trigger service level requirements via snowpack measurements as opposed to snowfall accumulation measurements. Best practice and recommended improvements. Administration has developed the following recommended improvements. Number one, defining windrow removal times. Our recommendation is that removal of windrows upon completion of priority 1 and priority 2 plowing. That would involve removing all windrows that exceed a height of 40 centimeters. We also recommend that the adjustment of signage requirements in P3 or lower to 24 hours prior to clearing during a major snow event of 8 centimeters or more. Currently, that sits at 48 hours before. The estimated cost of this improvement is already accounted for within the budget. Number 3, investment in additional contract services. Our recommendation is that we utilize contracted services to bolster city snow clearing efforts to improve snow removal timelines, as well as improve snow storage management and the capacity. The estimated cost of this would be $160,000 annually. Number 4, additional snow and ice control casual labor. It is recommended the addition of casual labor for the snow and ice control program to complete operational tasks, including operation of trail clearing machines, dump trucks, installation of signs, letter drops for vehicles obstructing snow clearing efforts, inspections, and managing work orders. Estimated cost of $62,000 annually. Number 5, with addition of grader, trail machine, and further operators. With the growth that City of Beaumont is currently experiencing, we recommend the purchase of an additional grader, trail machine, and 2 full-time operators to continuously meet service levels. The estimated cost of a grader is $635,000, trail clearing machine at $145,000, and 2 full-time operators at $190,000 annually. Number 6, optimizations of routes for equipment. It's recommended that the assignment of route planning and optimization to the team lead and manager to ensure efficient routes are utilized for snow clearing and removal efforts. This cost is already incorporated into our budget. Number 7, trail clearing improvements. An improved blend of sand and rock chips is proposed to improve traction, as well as increasing the frequency of application to provide safer conditions for trail users. Also, integration of a new trail clearing machine to improve the ability to maintain trails. Equipment would be operated by casual labor as proposed in point 4. The estimated cost of this is assigned in point 4. The new trail clearing machine was purchased as a part of the 2022 budget and will be online for the upcoming winter season. We just had an update. That machine will be coming mid-November. Financial implications. As a part of the 2023 budget, administration has proposed adjustments to the snow removal budget to account for the recommendations referenced in this report. To recap, the recommendations are an additional annual cost for removal of windrows at $48,000. Annual increase in contracted services is $160,000. An annual increase in casual wages for snow and ice control support, $62,000. And additional snow clearing equipment in 2024, including a grader and trail maintenance machine, totaling $780,000, as well as 2 additional full-time operators in 2024, totaling $190,000 annually. Thank you very much. I will now open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Piacentini. You get it right?
Yep.
Close
very
enough? There you go. Thank you for your report. Very informative and very detailed, which I'd like to see. So with that, I'll open up to questions from council before I have a couple of my own, but depends if I get to my questions. Sometimes the last guy to speak, everything's already talked about. So Councilor Tessier, you have the floor first, followed by Councilor McCook, followed by Councilor Barnard. Renee?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the great presentation. Just a couple questions. So if the extra units were to be approved in budget, do we have storage for them? Like as per our tour, it was pretty tight in there already. So is there a plan for those units being inside or outside type of thing?
We are tight for storage at the operations facility currently. The units will have a space indoors. We do have a cold storage, and we'll be able to rotate the machines through the equipment, through the storage, to always have a place indoors when non-operational.
Okay. Last year was one of those kind of off years, like super cold and super warm. It's tough to gauge if, you know, how well we did or didn't do. I thought we did a pretty good job, and you can throw as much money into snow removal as you want and you're going to get results. But I think there's a fine balance, obviously, when it comes to budget. Just driving around during last year's snow times, I felt like, and you'd be a good person to ask, were there issues with vehicles not moving when the signage was put out? Because every time I'd see the graders, you know, going around vehicles nonstop, have we looked at doing something that like other cities in removing those type of vehicles or warnings? Or, you know, I felt like signage was pretty good, but the other thing was signage. I felt like one day it's saying it's coming Wednesday, and then it might be a priority 2 or 3, but then it gets pushed 3 or 4 days. So it's tough to enforce any of those rules when the signage is changing all the time, and that's upkeep as well. So there's a couple comments on that. Just like your opinion on those 2 things.
Yep, it is tough when we install signs for a clearing and then it snows again and we're forced to go from priority 3 back to priority 1 because we have to do them in alignment. We did the feedback from the staff and the operators, who were amazing in this report. They provided the utmost feedback. They're really passionate. They really want to see an improved response for snow clearing. 80% of my crew that are operators, they all live within the city, so they're very passionate about giving back to the city, and they found that vehicles were hindering them more than anything else. So we would like to improve our response time with these new machines, with these operators, so that we can be more aligned with the signage placements and kind of get through those areas at an improved rate that would allow those signs to be more accurate than what they were last year.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Tessier, we also had, surprisingly, there was a lot of issues with basketball nets. People didn't take like basketball nets and things that were left on the curb. And then we hit one of these things, and then we'd have to go knock on the door and say, hey, we damaged your basketball net. And these things take a lot of time, especially when we're in, you know, full on, you know, it's snowing, we got to clear the streets. And I don't know how many basketball nets we hit this year, but it was more than a few. And they're easily damaged. It's plastic, it's cold. And so I think part of it is communication to residents, like make sure you clear these things out. I don't think anybody's playing basketball in the winter. If they are, good for them, but it definitely hinders our efforts. And then there's also the idea that, you know, we're going to work with our municipal enforcement partners to look at how we can better manage any of that type of efforts with vehicle removals and so on.
Yeah, and thank you for those answers. I would tend to agree with the operators driving around. You know, if I'm coming up against the operator and there's cars in his lane, now he or she has to wait to come around it, and it causes that time delay. You know, there's what do you do? I didn't really see anything in the report that kind of rectifies that issue other than ticketing. But that would be a big change in our city and being able to make it way more efficient. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll piggyback on a quick question before I go to my next councillor question. So in your experience, how much time do you think is wasted with graders having to go around parked vehicles and that sort of thing? I've seen it happen far too often. And I equate it to a farmer with a combine going down a line of crop to mow down. If he's got to go around stuff, it's going to take a lot of time. How much time do I think our graders waste going around vehicles? If you were to ballpark an idea, just a ballpark.
It's hard to quantify how much time they would waste, but it's very clear that they waste a fair bit of time going around, and then the quality of the clear is also impacted as well. To get back to that area once that vehicle is moved in a day or 2 days, it can waste, you know, half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back, the time to clear, plus the time to do your pre-start check, your maintenance time. We could be much more efficient if we didn't have those hindrances in our way.
Okay, appreciate that. I'm trying to get an idea, but Mr. Lewicki?
And to the mayor, also considering, as Bryce had mentioned, the quality of the clear is probably something that doesn't get talked about, because what happens is, especially if there's heavy snowpack or a large snowfall, the grader or snow clearing machine has to go around that vehicle, leaves a big ridge, and then no one can park there, rendering that area useless for parking, especially if you have a smaller car.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, yes, we have to go back and that's, you know, utilizing equipment where we've already been. I mean, we like to hit an area, go in, get out, move on. But if we have to keep coming back and people are like, I can't park my car in front of my house because there's a ridge there. And we try to accommodate and go back and do these things, but it definitely hinders our efficiency.
It's like going back, cutting your lawn a second time, 2 minutes later, which makes no sense, right? Got it. Thanks, guys. Councilman Cook, followed by Councilor Barnhart, followed by Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councilor Tessier for round 2. So Councilman Cook, Kat?
Yeah, thank you so much for this report. I think it definitely clearly illustrates a lot of the issues we encountered this past winter. That was especially difficult with the freeze thaw and the additional snow. However, my point of bringing this motion forward is that, you know, we could very well encounter the same winter or worse this year. So I think it was good to go through. And I do appreciate the suggestions for improvement that have been put forward. Can you clarify why it's recommended to trigger service levels based on snowpack versus snowfall measurements?
Yep. Thank you. That's a great question. Snowpack is just a much more accurate way to measure snow accumulation in those higher priority roads. Once we get to priority 3, 4, and 5, we can't get there. Our accumulation doesn't hit every time it snow falls. So when it falls, it accumulates, falls, it accumulates. So if you just went on accumulation, by the time we get one singular snow event that triggers the accumulation for, we have a snowpack of 20, 25 to 30 centimeters. So snowpack is just a way where we can be more accurate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. I also think defining a timeline for window removal is a good improvement. As I know personally, I heard a lot of complaints around that. People had hard times getting in and out of their driveways. Can you also explain why we are using height measurement for that? What's the reasoning behind that? So we have 40 centimeters. So if it's under 40 centimeters and it stays like that for, a week or two, will we still be going back and removing, or?
No, we can remove within the 40 centimeters, provided that we've cleared our other priorities first,
Mhm.
or upon the completion of priority 1 and priority 2. 40 centimeters was selected because it's a height that allows vehicles to drive over, and also line of sight is not impacted at that level.
Okay, so vehicles can drive over it if
Yeah.
once, okay, thank you for that. Just a couple more quick ones. Okay, thank you. Recommendation number 3 is a significant amount. However, I understand, and I think I probably know the answer to this, but is there any way in the future to kind of minimize this figure? Is this a figure that we'll pay regardless of whether we use the contracted services or not?
In a perfect world, we don't use this money. In a perfect world, it doesn't snow enough where we need to bolster our services. We don't have the back-to-back snowfall events that would cause us to go from priority 1 to priority 2 back to priority 1, causing in us not being able to touch priority 4 in months.
Mhm.
This investment would be to supplement our efforts, not to replace them. So they would be on call when we recognize that there's a major snow event and multiple back-to-back events coming forward.
Mhm.
We would engage the contractor to help us out, allowing us to catch up to them, and then we call them off and we continue to go. The goal is not to use all that money. The goal is to use as little of that money as possible and return it.
Okay, so it isn't something that we have to pay upfront to kind of maintain throughout the winter. It's more on an as-use basis.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I just, sorry,
oh,
through the
yeah.
mayor to Councillor McCook.
Mhm.
So what we found last year was we did our very best to keep up with the clearing and the snow removal. What ended up happening is that we just didn't extend far enough to get to these other areas, to the outer areas and do these things. What happened was our snowpack got to our maximum level, and then it got warm and the snowpack failed. Everything fell through.
Mhm.
And then we brought in all these contracted services to help clear that out. And everybody was around for the big push at the end there where we got all of that cleared. But the idea is that we want to make sure that we have the resource abilities to clear when we need. And as Bryce had indicated, this is only if needed. It's not like, yes, we need this money and it will be spent.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, the idea here is that we can't predict what the winter will bring. I mean,
No.
we could have a worse winter than last year. I hope not.
Mhm.
But so, we just don't know what's going to happen. So the idea is that this allows us to plan
Mhm.
and consider if we need it, it's there. We can trigger it. We can make sure we keep up and we don't have some of the issues from last year. So this is really a reflection of what we learned from last year and how we can do that better. Thank you.
For sure. I appreciate that, that expanded explanation. Thank you. So next thing, obviously we are expanding and bringing on more and more communities and neighborhoods to deal, and we will eventually need, as seen in the report, more machines and stuff to deal with this growth. Considering these neighborhoods are not all complete or near completion yet, are we expecting to see recommendation number 5 at this upcoming budget, or will it be more for future budget?
Roads are the first part of the development that will come across to maintenance. So they don't come across at the FAC level, they come across at the CCC level. So in a very early stage, we receive those roads to maintain in the winter. This will be in the 2024 budget. So not this one, but the following.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you. And I think the optimization of the routes as well as the additional signage will definitely be a good improvement as well. Should we see the same or similar winters? So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Newkirk, followed by Councillor Tessier. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McCook, because I think you covered a lot of the questions that I had as well. And I'll just follow up on a couple of them for clarity. And thank you, Aaron and Bryce. I'm not going to try your last name yet. I need to practice that name. But the questions that I wanted to just follow up on, the contracted services, and I could be reading this wrong. I see the estimated cost in the report is 208,000. And then I see it 160,000. So, and in your PowerPoint, it said 160. Am I missing another piece to the contracted services increase, or did I read that wrong?
I believe in the presentation, sorry, in the report, how it had the 200 and.
208 for
Yeah, that
annually?
included the 48,000 for wind removal.
Okay, that makes sense. I
Yep,
just
so it's
wasn't sure.
all encompassing.
Good, quick answer. I like that. And again, Councillor McCook answered my question about why you have it as contracted services. You're not going to use it if you don't need it. I just wonder if we have the capacity to put money aside. I know some municipalities call it a snow reserve. It doesn't always work. I mean, we don't want to see lots of money put in there. We don't want to pad the budget and then not use it. And that's not the intention. But it's also nice to have the ability, if we don't spend it all, to use it for a year when we do, because we don't have the same winter every year. Is there a capacity to do that? Or is that something we would have to pass some kind of snow reserve motion to do so?
If I could, that may well be, Mr. Schwartz, probably a budget related question, Mr. Dollar, Mr. Blanco, most likely. Generally may have the answer, but maybe more financial
If
question.
there isn't one now, then that's the answer I need. Is there a reserve now?
Mr. Schwartz
Through the-
or Mr. Lewicki?
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, I believe last year we did have a snow reserve and the additional contracted services that we utilized were from the reserves. The idea here is that we're kind of planning for having these services available without having to pull them from other reserves. So I would look for.
Okay,
I
I
don't know
think
if
that
Mike
is a
wants to
budget.
add to
yeah,
that.
a budget question.
It's a good question. I know we're going with that, but I think it's more of a budget for the
Yeah.
financial guys to
Yeah,
have
no,
a
it's
handle
good
on
to
that.
know.
Mr. Schwartz, would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, just quickly, we do have a snow reserve for that very reason, so that what doesn't get used one year can build off for the next year. So what you're suggesting is certainly something that could be done specifically around the contract as well. That it just stays in there.
So I think I'll pursue that at budget time, because that is kind of still a bit foggy to me. And following up on the growth question, because that's obvious that we have need to increase our budgets for that. Does this report cover growth and service level improvements, or just service level improvements?
Thank you. Great question. This report covers both the growth that we're going to see in the immediate next 24 months and also keeping up to date with our service level requirements.
So both are covered here.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilman Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of good questions that we've been going through tonight from fellow councillors. Well done on that. I just want to back us up right to the how we got here. So the report talks about the crazy winter we had, snowfall events, and we're not even done cleaning up the P1s before we move on to P2s and P3s, and then we get redumped again, and we just keep restarting. Then we have freeze thaw events. Trails are an issue, roads are an issue. We, for the first time since I'd been here, we had people spinning out on hills because of the crazy weather and the crazy things that happened. And, not because we aren't trying hard as an administration to solve these problems. So I'll say it again tonight this is a we hear you and we get it thing back to the community. And these are the realities and the costs associated with we hear you and we get it. Collectively, we see $1.24 million in recommendations, that can and will come forward at budget, right? So, operational budget of 460, capital budget of 780 for a total of 1.24. Complaints, concerns, feedback, they came in loud and strong. We stayed strong with fill the service portal, and boy, did the community respond. They filled the service portal. There were calls, there were emails, there was in-person feedback to City Hall. So, why I'm saying this is because all of that feedback gets wrapped up into a recommendation in February that says by the end of the third quarter 2022, we get a report like this in front of us. And then we go and consider these items at budget. So, if that doesn't speak to taking feedback, concerns, wrapping them up into a report, presenting it at the right time so that we can consider it at budget, I don't know what does. So, you know, the reason I state this is because I think we've done a good job at the timing of those things. At budget, when we get there, you know, if a person starts picking and choosing here, then you're gambling, you know, because you don't know what you're going to get. What's the weather going to do? You know, is it better to not do trails, but focus on this and pick and choose? You know, what's the right answer? We don't know. This time next year, we can, you know, if we picked and choose, then we would figure out what's there and what's not. So that's that. Just a question on the financial implications section. So will we expect to see these items incorporated as funded in the upcoming budget cycle? Is that the intent of the statement at the end? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Yes, we have put everything within the budget that is proposed for 2023. The items like the grader, the full-time operators, they will be proposed in 2024 budget.
Yeah, you betcha. And then the last piece I'll just say to that is, you know, there is a big chunk of this that's keeping up with growth as well, right? Like, you know, we were behind on physical machines and the hours available from staff to adequately keep up, right? So there is some catch up on people time. There is some catch up on equipment time included in this. So, you know, the growth portion of this, you know, can't be understated as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with your earlier comments. Well said on the listening to the community and presenting options, which will be discussed at budget. Thank you very much. Councillor Tessier, you were on next, but however, Councillor Miller missed the first round of questions. I'll go to Ashley first. I'll come around to you for round two. Councillor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you. There's really nothing I can add that doesn't, you know, echo what everybody else has already kind of asked. But I do think, you know, as you guys have noted, the growth aspect is, you know, something that, you know, as all these residents are watching and listening, that we really have to take into account because, you know, we are growing substantially and we are going to need these services and we are going to need this equipment eventually. So I think that's important to recognize. When Kathy mentioned the reserves or if there's any extra areas or not extra, that's not the word I should use, but if there's any other areas that we can take this from, that was a really good point. I'm interested to hear more about that. So thank you, Mike, for clarifying. Yeah, I think this is, it's really nice to have this laid out in front of us. And I hope that, you know, residents at home are going through this and this gives us some more teeth to explain to them as well. And I guess my last question is, given this coming year, say we don't have a winter as we did last year, what can you expect without these improvements, the service level to be?
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller. Even as it stands, I think we did learn some things from last year. I think we would raise the flag sooner that we need to do clearing of snowpack sooner. I mean, so your question was if we had the same year as last year? Sorry.
Yeah, if we, not the same year as last year. Last year was obviously a kind of a nuts winter, but say we had what you would consider a normal winter. You know, how do you guys feel you are prepped at this time for just a normal winter, not what we had last year?
We're prepared to handle that as we would plan for that. I think we have the equipment and people to do that. But we need to make sure that we're ready. I mean, it's such a dynamic situation with snow removal. Like one event can just cause everybody, like all hands on deck. And then we have to, you know, go in there and it might not be enough. So then we might have to bring in contracted services, right? Even though the year might be average, the actual storm itself might need an extraordinary response to keep those service levels. Right. So we want to make sure we have that. And I think that what we learned is by utilizing that contracted services, leveraging those contracted services with our existing resources, we have the ability to keep up with that. And that's why we're proposing that we have this lever with those contracted services by expanding that so that when we recognize that we're not keeping up, we can get right on it and keep in front of it, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we're good, we're building it up. The snowpack's getting higher, but we're still within tolerance. And then finding out we can't get there quick enough.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it's kind of like the old saying, if you plan or if you fail to plan, you can plan to fail. So I understand that. I just, one hesitation looking at this is this massive, recommendation of numbers in front of us. And so I have to admit, I'm a little hesitant about that. So thank you very much for all of your feedback and your presentation.
Thank you, Councilor. Before we go to Councilor Tessier, thank you. Before we go to Councilor Tessier, thank you, Ashley. I want to say a couple quick things before I go to round two with Councilor Tessier. Last year we did have a difficult year, as we all are aware. We had some complaints from residents, but I had a lot more positive comments on the quality of our grader operators, quality of our snow removal. Walking paths were cleared relatively quickly. People felt very safe in the walking paths. The winrow idea was a big hit with many people. So there were some tough points. There were some complaints that were at times legitimate given the circumstances, but many people realized it was a very odd year for weather. Like 32 below when it's snowing.
Yeah.
Like that's not very common, or 10 below when it's raining. That's a different one too. So tough for our crews to get through it. But now, having said that, Councilor Tessier, you have the floor for round two, then we'll move things along. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Round two, good conversation from everyone. It's always a hot topic. Just a couple more comments. Obviously, our neighborhoods with zero lot lines and being more condensed, we're going to run into more of those issues like we talked about with vehicles on the streets. And if your operators are saying that's 80% of the problem, that's a big deal. I would love to see us maybe push that envelope a bit and look at what other cities do to see, can we enforce that a different way, and how does that increase our efficiency? Obviously, some of this equipment is 100% needed because we're growing so much, but how efficient would we be with our own equipment right now going, at a 20% rate where you might see the odd vehicle? Our city's at a size right now that they're pretty engaged. And if we started early enough on, removing your vehicles on the certain date and that year after year after year, it'll just get easier, right? Obviously, some cities have kind of tried it in different areas and it's worked and it hasn't worked, but with the roads tighter, more cars, I think, this is a ton of money. Do you think we could do a better job by actually enforcing the rules we want enforced instead of adding more equipment and staff?
Through the mayor to Councilor Tessier. As a result of last year, agreed, there are efficiencies that can be realized here, but we're not talking $500,000 worth of efficiencies. Our team was stretched super thin last year. And to kind of go back to Councillor Miller's idea of can we do a lesser snow clear in the year with what we have? We can, but there's still going to be issues with people complaining. We're not going to get to things quick enough. It's doable. But again, the contracted services would help us to bolster that effort. And yes, we'll look for efficiencies, but I want to be really clear. We are strapped for staff. When we have a full snow clear, that office is cleared out. And it's not just like the park staff, the roads team. We have people who sit in the office out there doing snow clearing. It is a full, all hands on deck effort right now. So I just want to be clear that our current effort, it's not like we have some people hanging around and there's all these inefficiencies. Everybody gets all hands on deck. And when we went out and started clearing all of the snowpack after we had a lot of the complaints that we had, it was nonstop for 3 weeks. Like everybody, the office was vacant because everybody was out there. So I just want to be clear that we are really operating at the edge.
That's perfect. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Councillor.
Mayor.
Appreciate that. Oh, thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. One last quick comment. Funny thing was last winter, at one time, one of the grader operators was just pull over to the side of the road for a second. I had a quick conversation, and the grader guys take their job pretty seriously. They want to grade. They want to be around park hard. They want to get the job done, and they're highly motivated grader operators. I want to hats off to those grader operators in our city. They do a great job. So with that, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. Cena for the comments from council. I'll ask for a member of council willing to move the recommendation of the report receives information when the motion's on the screen. I see it there now. Councillor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
Sure. I move that the September 27th, 2022 report, snow removal improvements be received for information.
Thank you, councillor. Appreciate that. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote, please. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Our next item on our agenda this evening is 6D, dressing room trailers and washrooms for outdoor rinks. It is back on our agenda. Ms. Cuthbert, will you be speaking to that? Oh, you're leaving. Where are you going? She got up too fast. Mr. Gale, is this your department? All right, Mr. Gale will join us. I think I embarrassed him, Amanda. Sorry about that, but I thought you'd come up to present. It's bad timing, I guess. Mr. Gale,
Yeah, good evening.
you have the
Mayor and
floor.
Council, Josh Gale here, Operations Manager of the Infrastructure Department. I'm here to present the dressing room, trailer, and washroom for outdoor rinks report. So the recommendation from council was that by September, so we're going to recommend this September 27th, 2022 report be accepted for information. In December of 2021, administration asked to provide a report of options of costs for having dressing room, trailers, and washrooms located at the 2 outdoor rinks, J. LaPointe and Dance Row. So this report covers off the costs and implications related to the procurement of said trailers. So our proposal here, the report contemplates like a 12 by 40 standard ATCO kind of trailer that would be outfitted with facilities such that would be useful for outdoor skating rinks. So it'd be kind of a 2 kind of change room kind of idea with a washroom, heat, light, and all the accessibility ramps that are required. The installation of these trailers, to note, would require a development permit and a safety codes permit. So in particular, the LaPointe and Bellevue rinks are located in Saunterville. So there is an aspiration there for high quality visual appeal and urban design. So we'd work with our counterparts in planning and development to make sure that we have an appropriate design and application for a temporary trailer implementation. With regard to the specifics, there is a table in the report which outlines all the various costs per installation, giving us about $50,400 per year to install a temporary trailer at one site. So do the math, that'd be times 3 if you want to do it at all 3 rinks. So that'd be about a 6-month rental, kind of with mobilization in the late fall, early winter, and then carrying through the skating season. So with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. Appreciate that. Questions from council for Mr. Gale and Ms. Lewicki? Councillor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
That is me. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry, I removed this from the consent agenda. Just had a couple questions. So when I put this motion forward, I asked for exactly what you presented. So thank you very much. Now I'm not too sure what to do. So I'm wondering if it's a matter of another motion to direct further options, because to me, like, this is very nice, but this is substantially expensive. I would be interested in knowing, and I'm in the process of doing this research myself to find out what other municipalities are doing in other towns and cities, because I know this is a thing. Like, I do know it's beneficial to the community to be able to put your skates on somewhere, to be able to go to the washroom. I don't think it needs to be $50,000 each. And that's that's no fault of yours. You provided exactly what I asked for. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out the best way right now to go about this. And I don't really know what to do. So I don't know if I should make a motion tonight for other options, or if I should take this and wait on it. So I'm kind of asking administration if they would draft one for other options tonight, or what.
Ashley, if I could maybe, if I could ask administration, Mr. Schwartz or Ms. Winter, could this simply be brought forward to budget as part of the budget deliberations coming up in the fall? or is a further motion required at this time? I do have a follow-up question on the cost itself, which I'll ask Mr. Gale in a moment here, but while we're on Ashley's question, how can we best proceed based on this? So we can accept information tonight and bring it back at a later time. Could we not? She doesn't make a motion tonight.
Mhm.
I don't think she has to, does she? Ms. Winter, could you comment, Mr. Schwartz? Who would like to comment first or help some with some direction? Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. So no, the easy answer, no, Councillor Miller does not need to make a motion this evening. She can bring it back at any time if she's wishing to make administration for further information. There could be a referral motion. I will let Mr. Schwartz speak to it before I make any recommendations.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz.
I just wanted to add a couple comments, Councillor Miller. If you've got some specific options that you'd like us to pursue, then please send them to me.
Right.
I've seen, and I'm not saying this is the case here, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. I've seen this occur before where we'll look at a facility and go, you know what, it doesn't have to be that fancy. Why don't we just do this?
Mhm.
When we open public facilities, we have a whole bunch of more rules that we have to abide by. So
Yeah.
I'm trusting that Josh has looked through the most cost-effective options for us, and unfortunately, that's what they cost. But if you've got some other options, you know, why don't you fire them to us and we can bring that back at budget?
I think I'm more, and like I said, this is exactly what I asked for, and you know, Josh, you did exactly what I asked for, so I applaud that 100%. Thank you so much. I think I'm just looking more at, you know, like I said, what is happening in other towns and cities that maybe there isn't, you know, such fancy facilities such as heat and, you know, the janitorial upkeep, something like that, where we can kind of try to cut those costs a little bit. But for tonight, I'll receive this as information and think about it and go forward from there.
Yeah, and maybe through the mayor to Councillor Miller, just a few things to note. So the costing on this, of course, Bellevue used to have a skate shack. So a lot of the costs here are taken off of that. So as far as the routine upkeep and the cost to heat the building and keep it clean, those things are we're pretty confident in the pricing of that. And just as another note, we did include in the 2024 and 25 budget permanent skate shack construction for your consideration in the annual budget process. So it would look like 2024 would be a time when we do the permitting and design for permanent skate shacks with 2025 construction. So you could consider this as like the trial period, you know, if you were so interested to have it, to see if that would be something the community wanted, and then you could pursue the actual construction of a permanent skate shack. And then as another note to the Bellevue Rink phase 2 construction project will include the scope of the skate shack within that package as well.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, I just also wanted to indicate that we're a little concerned about, so obviously we provided what was requested.
Yeah.
And so we would want to make sure, and the report does indicate that we would want to do engagement with nearby residents.
Right.
There could be some concerns around, well, I don't want that behind my house, things like that. Even though it serves park users very well, there might be some concerns there. And we want to make sure that we're doing our engagement properly and considering that sort of thing. What Josh was indicating with the permanent shacks, you should call them shacks, the permanent skate trailers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, you can call them shacks. I think they're shacks.
Shack sounds so, but those would be designed aesthetically to meet the guidelines of the various areas and so on. So I think from an engagement perspective, those would go over much better because you would present a much prettier product.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to is like I have a vision for this, and you guys are, you know, explaining exactly kind of what I'm thinking. I'm just not sure, I'm just not sure we're there yet. So I would never want to do anything drastically that we're like, oops, you know. But I like where we're going, just not quite there yet. We'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. yeah, I wasn't surprised to see the cost where it is, because if you want a warm place to put your skates on in the middle of winter, we got to bring a trailer in and we got to heat it and we got to clean it and we got to deal with all that. And, you know, the document shows that that's 50 grand a trailer, and, you know, times it by however many you want. One of the things that, that I wondered after a little bit of discussion here tonight is, you know, do we even have room to put these things? You know, I don't know that site design contemplated the physical room to back in a 40-foot shack, put it down, you know, put a 100-pound propane bottle there or 300-pound and fence it in. And, you know, I think that is also something else that'll have to be contemplated as we try and find a solution. So, and the solutions range from, you know, a bench to, which we have, to a bench with a windbreak behind it, you know, a bench to a four-sided unheated building, you know, and then, you know, you just kind of scale up from there, and then costs creep up as well. So perhaps when we're thinking about what other communities do, or whatever Councillor Miller might be contemplating, those are the give and take type conversations that can be had with these types of structures, right? So, and I know you guys are aware of this. I'm just kind of verbalizing that for the rest of the discussion here. So, well-prepared report. Thank you. And thanks to Councillor Miller for asking this to come forward.
And just a quick comment through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk. So yeah, so line item 1 on the report is that site preparation element. And that's, as you say, like, we need to have a trailer that can be serviced by a vehicle to add potable water or take away sanitary. It needs to be located such that we can get a power supply to it safely. So it needs to be such that the drainage, if there's sunshine on it, it's not going to create a puddle of ice. That would be a slip hazard. It needs to be reasonably close and accessible. So there are a lot of constraints in that. Yeah, to your question, do you think it's possible? Yeah, it's possible. But I mean, the engagement issue, I think, is what Director Lewicki mentioned, is that, you know, if I was a person who potentially could back onto a ATCO trailer, you know, I'd want to make sure I was consulted and fully understood what the impact could be, right? So.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. Councillor Barnhart. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just had a last minute thought here, just to ask a question that might help me to formulate some questions later on, or some possible direction. But these costs are related to basically a public washroom, or is it a trailer that's of a size where you could have washrooms and perhaps an office?
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart. There's a photo right there. That's what an.
I know there's different sizes, so I'm just.
Yeah, so that's the one we proposed because it looked closest to what the Bellevue skate shack is, which would be what was 2 changers with a bathroom in the middle. So that's as close as you're going to get to that sort of design in a portable trailer. Now, could you get other options? Yeah, there are smaller options and larger options, but this one seemed to be the most appropriate. It had a bathroom that was accessible and whatnot.
Let me just tell you what's in my head is that there are groups who would love to have a space to have a weekly meeting that's heated and available.
Oh, yeah.
Or storage or whatever. It may not always be skating related. It might be something else. So I'm just thinking off the top here that if these costs are related to 6 months of this size, it would be double that if it was year round, I would imagine.
More or less. There'd be maybe slightly less on natural gas or propane, sorry, and slightly more on electricity. But yeah, overall.
The usage would change.
Yeah, that's right. But I would mention that we'd be putting special flooring in to make sure that, you know, skates could be used in the area. So it could certainly be used in other purposes in the summertime, no doubt. But yeah.
Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Any further questions before I ask for the motion to be through the report as information? Seeing none, Councilor Miller, would you prepare to make that motion when it's on the screen?
Stupid ding. Okay. I move that the September 27th, 2022 report, dressing room trailers and washrooms for outdoor rinks, be received for information.
Thank you, Councilor. Council, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask you to vote on the motion. And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We're now sitting at almost exactly 7:30, 90 minutes in. We'll take a 10-minute break, come back promptly at 7:40, continue with our meeting. So we're in recess till 7:40.